All right, let's examine this eagle model. So it should be file. Is this right? Okay, here we go. And we're going to go to source model, and I just added this in recently. It's called Eagle for Houdini, and it's not showing up. What the heck? Am I just not reading it right? Here it is. Okay. All right, let's take a look. I usually throw in a group node here to look at it all. Let's see, where did it go? Is it just massive? Okay, yeah, here we go. All right, let's see what we have to work with. I'm gonna open up this group view over here, which, there we go. Display group and oh, this is a single. It is a single mesh, so I cannot work with this file without having to, I'd have to split out all of the groups. I think the previous eagle was better in this regard, like it could be worked with. But let me double check here. So this is the old one, or this is the new one. Let me find the old one. It should be in here. Okay, here it is. Except, okay, yeah, here we go. This is much better. So all of the geos split out. This can be worked with. I don't see it, but oh, I think it's just really tiny. So we could scale it up to work with it. So let's do a transform real quick. Just scale it to like 100. Yeah, make it bigger. So you can see it easier. It may not need to be 100 bigger, but 10. Okay. Yeah, just so I can easily click around in the viewport. It has a hard time if it's too small. Okay, so yeah, so this is better because then now we can, with all these individual geo, we can make selections and stuff. So the most time-consuming part with processing a model is grouping. And so the rigging part doesn't take a long time. It's really just getting the groups right. So we have to think about what's the core of the ship that's not going to move and what parts move, and then also think about color. So like maybe these feathers, for example, would all be the same color. And so we'd want to find all of those feathers. And so we start to group them out. So the swan, for instance, we have this whole section here where we take and find these parts, like in the modeling program. And so a lot of things are named like body. Some of them do have names, but actually, yeah, a lot of these have names. uh, so it's kind of a bad example. But there's another file where we, like a lot of the engine models, for example, we don't really have a lot of names. Oh, here it is. That's why. Yeah, group rename. So here you can see mesh body 03, and then we rename it to something that's easier to manage. And so I usually start by doing that if it's a complicated model. So it's a intermediary step before we're actually creating the color groupings. So this eagle, like I would say off the bat, the feathers we probably want the same color. The wings we probably want the same color. Um, what else? Let's think about all these like little parts on top, and like what else? Like the tail could be the same color as the wings. And then maybe this metal piping here could be the same as like the talons and the claws. Or this underbelly here could be, uh, you know, either the same or like the talon claws are the same as the beak. So you can just sort of like imagine out the color groupings. And in general, the rule of thumb is like try to keep them spaced apart. And then there's no more than 8 colors. That's what our engine will support. Which originally we supported like some ridiculous number, like 130, but we don't need that many for a stylized thing. So yeah, that's the first thing. So grouping, starting this from scratch and grouping all of this, the grouping will probably take like 2 hours. And then after the grouping is done, as long as there aren't any issues, like which I can kind of scan to see if I can find any right now. Okay, primitives, select whole geometry. It's giving me trouble. Hold on. Okay, there. I think that's right. Select groups. Yeah. So I think it's doing this whole blue highlight thing because there's one that's called group one here that there it's all group one. So if we just move up one, it goes away. Okay, yeah. So we can kind of see. So there's the beak here, feathers. So the feathers are all grouped as one thing. That's not an issue for color, but for like simple animation stuff that like they would all have to move as one, which wouldn't look as good for that kind of animation, but it's okay. And then also both sides. So it's like a mirror. It was mirrored. So that's fine again for color, so we can kind of ignore that. And we don't even need to animate that. It could just be static. This thing rotates. Pretty neat. Okay. And we could just have the top rotate if we want to. So the gears are isolated for animation. Yeah, the gun is separated. That's cool. Nice. What else do we have here? Yeah, so this is a problem with for animation, like how it's all one object, and especially because like both wings are united as one object. That makes it really hard to work with. You have to basically divide all this geometry up. So for color, it's fine. Like for a static mesh, this is okay. Well, actually, it's not because these little arm parts need to like you'd want them to be a different color than the feathers. So like maybe this arm part would be the same as the rigging, or I shouldn't call it rigging. I'm thinking of the actual ship, but like this, the metal piping or the metal claws. So like perhaps that would be the same color, but then the feathers should be like a distinctive color here. So these joints, which this is really neat joints, by the way, it's really cool. So all these joints in the middle would probably be a different color, and so this wouldn't work for either color nor animation because it's all one body. So like in general, we need it to be pieced up like this so we can color it and it's better for it to be two pieced up. Like this is very pieced up here. We might combine some of these after the fact, like this little gear part here and this. Um, it's so small that what I'll probably do is just combine these two groups. And so that's okay. That's really easy to do. What's hard to do is split geo. We can split geo. It's just challenging because you have to do stuff like this. So you have to get rid of this select, and then you see these like individual frames here. So I can select these verts, and we can do this, which actually is not looking very good. Select front and back, face, edges, vertices, breakpoints. Okay, yeah, I'm trying to find that selector. Anyways, I guess my point is like it's challenging to do. So you can do stuff like this. That helps. And you can define new groups with that, but you can see how that gets difficult, especially because if you accidentally select things underneath, it just requires a lot more time. And so it's easier to just, in the source program, just make sure it's separated into its own group, and then we don't have to, then I can just, within Houdini, I can just select these isolated parts and work with that. So we do that because of the vertex coloring. And the vertex coloring allows us to customize better. We could use textures. So you could do it a different way, which is like using textures. But if you use textures, then you lose the animation data. So like we can't, with the rigging process, because the geometry name is tied to the rigging, it saves us a lot of like time in that way. So we can just do it once. We can label the groups and stuff and then assign them. But like, so if we look at the swan, actually it's over here in the swan rig. Oh, this is the old one. We're not gonna have. Oh no, the concept's still there. So like, here's vertex color assignment. So let me see if we can look at this. What frame are we on? Frame one. Let's go ahead and just look at it over here. And cut this off so it's not in the way. Okay, so here's this guy, and if we just look at, how can I get it to show the orange colors? C1. All right, so like this here, C1. I'll probably open it up in Unreal too. So, all right, see that color? Color 1. Now we're gonna quickly look at Unreal. I'm in the middle of something else, but I think it's fine. Oh, please don't be broken. This would be bad timing. Developer, map, and Captain Room 2. Sure, save it all. Okay, cool. It's saved. All right, so here we are. Now, special attention paid to those parts that we're looking at in Houdini. So C1, see what just highlighted those blue things? All right, let's go back to Unreal. And we're going to go to the Swan colorable. Get rid of tags, filter, color component, and we have index 1 here. So I'm just going to change this real quick to like red 1. And I hit update. See, it just changed. So we do this for the color customization, but it has a dual purpose. The other purpose of these names, you'll see that we're just using these, we're grabbing the objects here. The other purpose is the rigging with the skeleton here. So if we look at this, it's actually kind of challenging to see. There's a way to get it to show the dots. Trying to figure out how to get it. I always forget the interface like every time. I have to figure it out again. Oh, is it this? Yeah, I think it's this guy. All right, so now we have these dots and we can kind of see. So all these names here, so like whole rear, root, clavicle left, minigun. So these are like the names of the groups. And so we take the geo and we regroup them. And then we just use the same names for these bones here. And there's some code in here that does the rest. Like it unifies all that stuff. So that's kind of how we're getting away with uh, just doing it. Like you can kind of ignore all the simulation stuff because we don't need that to do that in Houdini anymore. But the group names and being able to isolate the individual geometry is important for both coloring and for animation later. So, because that's how we control the rigging and stuff. We do it all through grouping geometry. And so we group them differently based on the need. The colors we group into 8 different categories here, up to 8 different categories. It looks like the swan isn't using the 8th one. And then, yeah, for animation, we would do the same thing here. Like, is we would group all this geo up into respective parts. So we would want to say, like, go back to this mouse one here. It's like feathers. We might have a group called feathers, and it captures all the feathers. But then we might have another group that says rear feathers, and it only includes these rear feathers. And so the rear feathers group we might only use for animation purposes or rigging purposes, right? But then we may use the shared group feathers for color. And so it's just organizing it all into some usable pieces, which I don't mind doing. It takes a while though to group the geo group. The actual skeleton work, once you have the groups organized, the skeleton work takes like 30 minutes. And so what's nice is if you organize your geo, the skeleton rigging takes like almost no time at all, because all you do is just add these points in and give them the same name as the corresponding group that you want it to affect. And so once you attach this bone to that geo, then you can do things to this joint, like rotate it, scale it, translate it, and it'll let you do that. Um, but then you also get the coloring all at once. So it's like a 2-in-1 approach. So organizing the geo gets you both of those things. You can use traditional methods, but I don't know how to do do that. Like you would have to, I guess, skip the geo naming, treat the geometry as one mesh, because like that's kind of like what a lot of people do is they use weighting and stuff and painting. But that is a very painful process because what you end up doing is with this one bit of geometry, let me see if I can find it. I don't even know where it's at anymore. There you are. With this one bit of geometry, you can't organize it anymore. So you can no longer assign the color data in here, and you can no longer assign the bones. And so you're stuck shoving all of that information into textures. So now you have to generate UVs, and then you have to have someone go and color those UVs, or color the textures for each of those data fields, which is challenging, right? Like you have to you start dealing with resolution problems. So LODs, it really gets more complicated to use textures. So we can use them, but it's more challenging. And then furthermore, with like animating with traditional rigging and painting weights and stuff, well, now if you're writing a bone here, you have to then come in and do what I was kind of doing earlier, where you have to select via a painting tool. So you turn this off, and let me see if I can get this to show up again. Yeah, so then you have to sit here and kind of paint the verts here that are responsible for that bone, and then assign a weight, which for machines is always going to be weight 1. But you can just see how tedious this is. And so I don't think that workflow is necessary. Like I know it's traditional, but I just think that it's cumbersome for mechanical models. Like maybe it makes sense for organics where you do have like partial control of a bone where you're moving someone's shoulder, and so it should also affect their arm. But for this, it's pretty cut and dry where like we just know that a bone here is just going to affect this guy, and that's it. And like it's going to affect this whole geo. And so for now, we don't really need that traditional. I'm calling it like an organic animation workflow. I don't know what it's actually called, but for machines, we can really get away with just using these joints, and it simplifies our workflow quite a bit. I did the same thing with all the other machine models and stuff too, which I don't have in here. This is a trimmed down file just to so it's smaller. It saves time. Hopefully, it doesn't create a lot of errors. But yeah, that's anyway. That's my analysis of this Eagle file. So the second one that you made isn't going to work for this workflow. Like it would work for a traditional workflow, but I think you're going to spend an enormous amount of time, and it's not going to produce the same customization that we'd want in the game that we already have coded for. But then this first one you made is actually better because it has the turn this back on, because it has all the things divided up, so we're able to use that. Wow, I don't know where the model went. Yeah. Anyway, video over for now, I suppose.